To Thine Old Self Be True is the 20th episode of the 7th season of Frasier. This is directed by Robert H. Egan, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts, and it's an absolute joy. It starts off with Blazer Day, as Daphne calls it. Frasier had ordered an expensive blazer. It was going to arrive today, and then he bumps into Regan, played by Gigi, and Frasier seems quite happy about this, and he comes back into the apartment and talks with Martin and refers to himself as the Frasier go-round, which is a little bit awkward. And then he's in Cafe Nervosa with Roz, and Niles comes in, and we get a bit of suspense as Niles says that there's something they have to see. And then Niles gets distracted by Frasier's new blazer, which I rather liked. I thought that was fun. And then they go to the window, and they're looking at what Niles describes as a rotund woman. And obviously Frasier and Roz are like, what are you doing? Why are you making fun of this woman just because she's large and eating whatever she's eating from the bakery? And they walk away. And Niles says that it's Maris. And of course they rush back to the window. And, well, it's not what anybody expected, to say the least. And we'll come back to Maris in a little bit. Frasier's then talking with Roz and talking about how Donny doesn't want him to throw the bachelor party for him because, well, they have different tastes. And Frasier says, and I quote, "Back in my Boston days, I had a regular bar and a regular bar stool." And to that I say, no, you didn't, Frasier. Yes, you had a regular bar, beloved cheers. But no, you didn't really have a regular bar stool. Sometimes you'd sit on the left, sometimes you'd sit on the right beside Norm or Cliff, but he never really had his own bar stool. I was never like, Norm was really the only one who had a regular bar stool. Occasionally Norm would sit on the other side and it would just throw everything off balance. But Frasier had a couple of locations that he would say that, but certainly a regular bar. And I just wish he'd mention it by name. There would be no reason to, but I love any cheers mention. And then he calls Donny and insists that he's going to throw him Donny's kind of bachelor party. And, well, Frasier is going to give it a good go. He's trying to hire a stripper, and then there's a knock at the door, and it's a police officer. And she's there because Frasier vandalised the newspaper stand earlier on, and she pushes him onto the sofa, which I don't think an officer is allowed to do, and she starts to unbutton her shirt. This is Officer Nasty, also known as Dinah, played by Rachel York, and it turns out Martin had decided to help Frasier with the stripper finding by hiring a stripper. Martin's clapping his hands, he is giddy. It is Frasier's facial expression when he realises what's happening. It's just absolutely fantastic. It's a really great scene. Niles then comes in with Mel, and it turns out Maris had seen a picture of Niles and Mel in the paper, and she's now blaming Mel for her weight gain, saying that she had nicked her thyroid gland during a neck tuck. And obviously Mel is panicking about this. It could affect her business. And there's a lot of coming and going for the rest of this episode, and it works so well. Frasier goes through to the bedroom with Officer Nasty, starts giving her directions on what her performance should be like. And then they come through to the main room, handcuffed together with Officer Nasty in her underwear. It didn't exactly work out right. And then Daphne's massaging Mel. Mel is not a nice person. She's not a nice character at all. And she said something, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but she's talking about how she loves Niles and thinks a lot of him. And I quote, "There are all these things he could be. She wants to change him. She wants him to be comfortable enough around her to start exploring other parts of himself." But to me, that's just saying, I want to change him. I feel like the intentions are good. She's trying to get him to unlock untapped potential, which in itself is not a bad thing, but the way she worded it sounds like she wants to change him. And also Daphne in that moment was listening to somebody else talking about how much they love Niles. I think it's very clear Daphne's starting to realise she does indeed have feelings for Niles. Maris then comes over, which... Is this the first time Maris has been to the apartment? Obviously, we don't see her, of course. It might be. I'm not sure. I mean, within the context of Frasier, I'm sure within real life she'd been over many times. But certainly, well, having said that, it's Maris, so maybe not. But it was certainly an unexpected moment. And then Frasier bumps into Regan again. She spills her groceries, and he just stands there and watches her pick them up. And that's because on the other side of the door is the stripper. is Officer Nasty handcuffed to Frasier. And I would have been mortified in that moment if I was Frasier and somebody had spilled their groceries and I didn't launch down to help. He kind of kicked a cabbage. I think it was a cabbage. It was mortifying, but very funny. And then he feigned having a bad back, which, fair enough, at least he had an excuse. And he then hides in the bathroom with Dinah, with Officer Nasty, and the others are trying to guess what could be wrong with his shoulder and his arm. And then he says, it could be any of those things, or, and I quote, it might be the stripper chained to my wrist. And Frasier's clearly just done with the situation, and the reveal was quite funny. And he said, after all this, of course, nobody would want to date me. And the stripper, Officer Nasty, just said, I would. And we end the episode with Frasier coming back into the apartment, having been out to dinner with Dinah, with Officer Nasty. I suppose she was Dinah at that point. I assume she wasn't performing as Officer Nasty. And he started to share all of these interesting things about her, and she was really intellectual, and he pointed out that he shouldn't judge a book by its cover, which is, I think, a really good position to take. Not that she was painted in a negative light when she was Officer Nasty. I don't think anybody was degrading her or looking down on her, but I do like the fact that they took the time to say, look, this is just one side to this person. There is so much more to her. This is just a job. It's just a gig. There is more to her life, and I think that was a really good thing to do. As I said, they didn't have to do it because I don't ever feel like they were degrading her or looking down on her or saying nasty things about her, but I think it was definitely worthwhile. And then we end the episode with Martin trying to look at things in the newspaper and Daphne trying to take it off him. It was good fun. I really enjoyed the episode. I think it had a lot to offer. I think there's a lot of suspense, there's a lot of comedy, and of course the mention of Cheers always gets my heart racing as well. I don't think I have any specific highlights. I think the way it was handled down at Cafe Nervosa with Niles and the suspense and then the reveal that it's Mars, I thought that was very effective. The moment with Daphne massaging or sorting out Mel, I feel like was important for it. I think what Daphne didn't say was more important, because I think in that moment she wasn't able to really engage in conversation about Niles because she was so lost in her own thoughts that she's probably finding at this point to be quite confusing. So I think that was quite telling. And obviously the scene where Frasier came back from dinner with Dinah, I thought was brilliant as well. So all things considered, To Thine Old Self Be True is a pretty brilliant episode of Frasier.